Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, February 21st. It's about 350 albums coming out this week. I got 10 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a lot of great albums coming out this week. It's about 350 of them, but I've only got time to talk about 10 of them, so I'm going to put a expanded list down in the comment section with a bunch of other great albums that are getting released this week. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to grabbing this week. Like always, you can always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. I've got all the new releases on there, pre-orders, and a bunch of other cool stuff to check out. So over the last couple of years, I've been talking a lot about Dirty Honey and how I think they are one of the better, newer rock bands out there. They've got their first live album coming out this week. This is Mayhem and Revelry Live. So this is a new 2 LP release. There's going to be a black version of this. There's also a blue version. It's going to be $20, which I think is an unbelievable price for a 2 LP release. But it's kind of cool how they broke up this album. So the first LP is all from the North American leg of the tour. Second LP is all from the European leg. There's also a 4-part documentary that goes along with this. I haven't had a chance to see them live, but I've heard nothing but incredible reviews. And it sounds like this live album is really trying to capture the magic that they have live. So it's definitely what I'm looking forward to checking out this week. You've also got the new album from Silverstein coming out. This is Antibloom. This is their 12th studio album. It's going to be on magenta colored vinyl. It's going to run you about $23. So it's actually the first of 2 albums that Silverstein is going to release this year. So they're doing this in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the band. So you've got Antibloom coming out now, and then later this year is going to be Pink Moon, which is going to be the second half of this double album that they're doing. They've released 3 of the 8 tracks already as singles. If you're unfamiliar with Silverstein, they are a really good post-hardcore band that's been around for a while now. Their first 4 albums got a lot of really good reviews. I think 4 of their first 5 albums were all in the top 40 on the Billboard 200 here in the U.S. There's also some really good music on vinyl releases that are coming out this week. The first one was Human Factor by Metal Church. Came out back in 1991. It was their 4th studio album. It's going to be on flame-colored vinyl. It's going to run you about $39. It's limited to 1,000 copies. So by 1991, rock music was really changing. But with this album, Metal Church really stuck to their thrash roots. It's definitely more of a political, more like socially conscious album also. And I'm not familiar with Rock Hard magazine, but apparently they did this list of the 500 greatest rock and metal albums of all time. And this album ended up at 447. I will say I've only listened to a handful of Metal Church songs. I think a majority of the songs I've heard from them are on this album, though. But they're one of those bands I definitely need to go back through more of their catalog. You also got Ungod by Stabbing Westward getting reissued. This came out back in 1994. It was their debut studio album. Same thing as another music on vinyl release. But music on vinyl, they a lot of times they'll do like a limited series, like limited to 1,000 or 2,000 copies. And then later on down the line, they'll do a standard black version that's non-limited. This is the standard black version of this that's coming out this week. It's going to run you about $38. So speaking of Rock Hard magazine, this album, they actually had it rated a little bit higher than Human Factor. This one was rated at number 425 on that same top 500 list. And if you go through this album, there's a couple songs you might be familiar with. Violent Mood Swings was on the soundtrack for Clerks. I think the song Nothing was in the movie Bad Boys also, but I'm not 100% sure. I think those two, I know Violent Mood Swings was definitely in Clerks, but I'm not 100% sure. I think the other one was in Bad Boys, but it's been a long time since I've watched Bad Boys. So Stabbing Westward is another one of those bands I'm not all that familiar with. I think this is the only album of theirs I've listened to from beginning to end, and I think it was because of Clerks is why I actually end up listening to this album. I'm not generally a fan of industrial rock, but they're one of those bands I definitely need to go back through more of their catalog of. There's also a new album from Tate McRae coming out this week. This is So Close to What. This is her 3rd studio album. It's going to run you about $29. If you're unfamiliar with her, she's a Canadian pop star. Her first 2 albums were huge. I think her debut was number 14 on the Billboard 200. Her second album was in the top 5 on the Billboard 200. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard a single one of her songs, at least that I know of. I just think this is going to be a big album. I know there's some people online that have been talking about really looking forward to this release. But what caught my attention is the first 3 singles that she's released off this album have all hit the Hot 100 here in the U.S. This is one where, I'll stream it and check it out. It's not generally my favorite kind of music, but your first two albums have gotten a lot of really great reviews. So it's, I'm somebody who tries to at least like look outside of what I typically listen to. And sometimes I'll throw some of the stuff on and, I'll listen to a couple of songs, and generally I don't like it, but it's something I'll at least, give a shot this week when I go down through my list of new music to stream. You've also got Gentleman's Blues by Cracker getting reissued. This came out back in 1998. It was their fourth studio album. It's another music on vinyl release. It's going to be on black vinyl. It's going to run you about $48. So this album was never available on vinyl until, I think it was late 2024, early 2025. I think it might have been January, I think, when this one actually got released. So music on vinyl, sometimes they'll do like a really limited release on black vinyl, and then have like a wider release, within a month or two after that. This is one of those albums where, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a good one to check out because, yes, Cracker has released more albums than just Kerosene Hat, which is the only album I think everyone knows of from the band. But I don't think this album is quite as good as Kerosene Hat, but it's definitely a good one to go through if you're unfamiliar with it. There's a couple really great jazz albums that are getting reissued this week. Both of them are part of the Blue Note Classic series, which they do a great job with the Classic series. These are all albums typically run about $28. Actually, I think both of these albums are $28. They take these albums that have been out of print for a very long time and reissue them. Both of these albums are fantastic, though. I love both of these. I don't have either one of them on vinyl. I'll probably grab both of them this week. But the first one was Sonny Rollins, Volume 1. This came out back in 1957. So over the last couple of years, Sonny has definitely become one of my favorite jazz musicians. His improvisational creativity is on full display on this album. I think this is one of the better later 50s or late 50s jazz albums. If you're getting into jazz, you want to check out Sonny Rollins' music, I think this is a great one to start with. He's joined by Donald Byrd on here. He's got Wynton Kelly on here, Gene Ramey, Max Roach on drums, which, Max is one of the greatest jazz drummers of all time. So it's definitely one I'm going to grab this week. You've also got Dexter Gordon, Our Man in Paris, coming out. This came out back in 1963. Same thing. It's going to run you about $28. It's all mastered by Kevin Gray, pressed at optimal. So in 1962, Dexter moved to Denmark from Paris. He'd been living in Paris since 1959. But when he arrived in Paris, he was playing with, he put this group together with Bud Powell and Kenny Clark, and they played together with some other musicians off and on. I should say off and on, pretty regularly, actually, while he was living in Paris. So in 1963, he teamed up with these guys again and would go on to record one of the better albums of his career. I've only got, I think, two Dexter Gordon albums, so it's definitely another one I need to grab this week. Another music on vinyl release that's coming out this week is Dogman by King's X. So this came out back in 1994. It was their fifth studio album. 2 LP releases, been on red and black marble vinyl. It's limited 2,000 copies. It's going to be a little pricey. It's going to run you about $49, but MOV releases tend to be a little pricier, especially the 2 LP versions or the 2 LP releases. So this album was kind of cool because the year before, so in 1993, Brandon O'Brien, who produced this album, he produced both Core by Stone Temple Pilots and Verses by Pearl Jam. I think he'd mixed Get a Grip by Aerosmith also. So he'd done some really huge albums. They brought him in on this one. Dogman is more of a darker, heavier album than what King's X had released before. And when it was released, it got widespread critical acclaim. By 1994, rock music had really changed, and King's X changed with it. And Dogman is, I think, a representation of where rock music was in the middle part of the 90s there. And then you've also got Big Game by White Lion getting reissued. This came out back in 1989. It was their third studio album. It's a Friday music release. It's going to run you about $38. There's 2 different versions of this also. There's a gold version and a silver version. These are both reissues of releases that Friday Music did back in 2023. Actually, I think it was 2024 when they came out. But regardless, it was about a year or so that this was first released. It was a follow-up to their multi-platinum second album, Pride, which is always going to be a hard album to follow up when you have that kind of success with an album. This album commercially didn't do as well as Pride, but there's a couple singles off this album that got a lot of radio play. Their cover of Radar Love, I think, is probably one of their better known tracks. I personally, I think this is a better album overall than Pride, and probably the band's best album overall. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. It's not a huge week for music. I don't really have anything on a pre-order this week, but I do have some stuff I might grab. I might grab both of those jazz releases. I might grab that Cracker release. I'll at least stream a couple of the other ones, but let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you yell thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.